Imagine, if you will, a delivery of mannequins wrapped in bubble wrap. It was a day like any other, brimming with the mundanity of the everyday when an unexpected turn of events came knocking at the door. An unfamiliar delivery truck pulled up, its tires crunching on the gravel driveway. The air was filled with a sense of anticipation, laced with a dash of uncertainty. The delivery men, faces obscured by hats and masks, began to unload their cargo. As they walked in, a chill ran down my spine. They were carrying figures, lifeless and still, bundled up in yards of bubble wrap. The figures were mannequins, their blank eyes staring into nothingness, their pallid faces devoid of expression. Each one was different, yet each one was eerily similar. They were like specters from another world, their presence transforming the room into a tableau of the uncanny. The mannequins were arranged in the main room, their bubble wrap gowns rustling softly with each movement. Despite the sunlight streaming in through the window, the room had taken on a ghostly pallor, the shadows cast by the mannequins stretching long and spooky against the walls. The room was silent, save for the occasional pop of bubble wrap, a sound that seemed to echo ominously in the quiet. Each mannequin stood in its place, a silent sentinel wrapped in bubble wrap, their lifeless eyes reflecting the room around them. They were an army of the inanimate, their existence redefining the space they occupied. The air was thick with an uncanny sense of anticipation. What secrets did these mannequins hold? What story were they here to tell? As the delivery truck pulled away, the gravel crunching under its tires once more, the sense of unease deepened. The men had left as silently as they had arrived, leaving behind only the mannequins and 1,000 unanswered questions. The room felt different, charged with an energy that hadn't been there before. The delivery guys left, leaving me alone with these uncanny figures. As the evening fell, the house grew quiet, too quiet. With the departure of the sun, the house was enveloped in a blanket of silence, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl, the kind that amplifies every sound, every creak of the floorboards, every sigh of the wind. It was the kind of quiet that you could cut with a knife, so thick and heavy it felt like a tangible presence in the room. Imagine, if you will, the solitude of this place. An old house, far removed from the hustle and bustle of the city, standing alone in the embrace of the encroaching night. It was during these hours that the house seemed to take on a life of its own, every shadow a whisper of stories untold. The mannequins, those lifeless figures, they were there, in the main room, standing as still as the night itself. Yet there was something about them, something uncanny. The way the moonlight fell upon their plastic skin, casting an eerie glow. It was as if they were basking in the moon's cold light. Silent witnesses to the unfolding night, they were wrapped in layers of bubble wrap, like cocoons waiting to burst forth into the world. Amid the stillness, they stood there, those silent sentinels, their presence a stark reminder of the day's strange delivery. One couldn't help but feel a sense of unease, a prickling sensation at the back of the neck, as if being watched by unseen eyes. The mannequins, those lifeless figures, they seemed somehow more alive in the depths of the night. A trick of the mind, perhaps, or something more. As the hours ticked by, the house seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Waiting for what, one might wonder? The answer to that, my friends, is a mystery that the night was yet to reveal. Amid the quiet, amid the solitude, the mannequins stood there, wrapped in silence and bubble wrap. Then, all of a sudden, the silence was broken by a distinct popping sound. It was not a single solitary pop, but rather a series of them, each one echoing through the empty corridors of the house like a Morse code from another realm. It was as if each pop was punctuating the silence with a sharp, sudden exclamation mark, a staccato note in the symphony of the night. You could feel the tension start to rise, a palpable sense of unease that seemed to seep into every nook and cranny, filling the air with a heavy sense of dread. Each pop was a jarring reminder of the surreal situation at hand, a stark contrast to the tranquility of the night just moments ago. The popping sounds were not constant but came in irregular intervals, like an unpredictable metronome. Each pause between the pops was filled with anticipation, a pregnant silence that seemed to hold its breath in wait for the next pop. As the popping sounds continued, they seemed to increase in frequency, a relentless percussion that was growing louder with each passing minute. It was as if the house had come alive, its pulse quickening in response to some unseen stimulus. You could almost visualize the bubble wrap, each bubble bursting under an unseen pressure, releasing a small puff of air that carried with it a sense of foreboding. The mannequins, wrapped snugly in their protective cocoon, were like silent spectators to this eerie symphony, their blank faces betraying no emotion, their secrets safe within their plastic shells. Just when you thought the popping sounds couldn't get any louder, they did. It was as if they were inching closer, the source of the sound moving through the house like a specter, its unseen presence felt in the increasing volume of the pops. The tension was at a fever pitch now, the house alive with the cacophony of popping sounds. The silence of the night was a distant memory, replaced by the relentless popping that was now the house's heartbeat. And just when you thought it couldn't get any more intense, the unthinkable happened. The popping sounds were getting louder and closer. Gathering courage, I decided to confront the source of the sound. With a deep breath, I began my journey to the main room. Each step felt heavy, as if the very air around me was resisting my progress. The hallway seemed longer than I remembered. The shadows cast by the dim lighting took on eerie shapes, adding to the mounting dread. The silence was broken only by the irregular rhythm of the popping sounds, each one a jarring reminder of the mystery that waited in the main room. As I approached, the popping sounds grew louder, more insistent. It was like the room was calling out to me, inviting me to uncover its secrets. The suspense was so thick you could cut it with a knife. It was a symphony of anticipation, the crescendo building with every step I took. The door to the main room loomed ahead. It stood as a barrier, a final threshold between the known and the unknown. Behind it lay the mannequins, delivered in bubble wrap, their inert forms the only company in the room. Or so I thought. The popping, the inexplicable sounds, they were coming from there. My hand reached out to the doorknob, the cold metal a sharp contrast to the warmth of my palm. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath hitched, and a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. Yet, I couldn't turn back now. The sounds, the mystery, they had a pull on me that was impossible to resist. The door creaked, the sound echoing in the silence as I pushed it open. The room beyond was shrouded in darkness, the shapes of the mannequins barely discernible. The popping sounds were deafening now, a constant barrage that sent shivers down my spine. I steeled myself, gathering the last bits of my courage. I was ready to face whatever was causing the popping. I pushed the door open, ready to face whatever was causing the popping. And there they were, the mannequins, just as I had left them. As I entered the room, the early morning sun filtering through the window cast long, eerie shadows that danced on the walls. But, despite the ominous ambiance, the mannequins stood perfectly still, wrapped tightly in their bubble-wrap cocoons. Just the night before, the room had been filled with a symphony of popping sounds. My mind had raced, concocting a multitude of horrifying scenarios. Each pop was a phantom movement, a mannequin breaking free, an uncanny figure coming to life. But here they stood, as lifeless as ever. The mannequins were not the culprits of the Midnight Symphony. No, the true perpetrator was something far less sinister. It was the bubble wrap. Yes, folks, the very bubble wrap that had been used to swaddle these inanimate objects in the first place. You see, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the room cooled, the air trapped in the bubble wrap contracted. Each tiny bubble, a miniature pressure vessel, responded to this change in temperature, and as the pressure inside each bubble decreased, the walls of the bubble contracted, causing it to pop. One by one, the bubbles succumbed to the cold, their pops echoing through the empty room, creating the illusion of movement where there was none. The bubble wrap, a material designed to protect, had turned into an instrument of fear, its symphony a soundtrack to a horror story that existed only in my mind. The realization washed over me. My fears, my anxieties, they had all been a product of my imagination, fueled by the harmless popping of bubble wrap. I had allowed the darkness and the unknown to cloud my judgment, to create monsters where there were none. The mystery was solved. The culprits were the temperature and the bubble wrap. The mannequins, innocent bystanders in this tale, remained wrapped in their bubble wrap, oblivious to the drama that had unfolded around them. Y'all, we're wrapping up here, but don't you go anywhere just yet. Show some love, hit that like button, Fancy more content like this? Go on, subscribe and let that bell icon ring so you won't miss a beat. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, sharing is caring. Until next time, stay tuned.